Alright, now, today it is August 15th. As you might have guessed, this could be a good opportunity to be able to rack up on movies relating to another subject to be regarding new film releases, that of which is known as Alien Romulus. Of course, I actually do have plans to watch this film and be able to get a chance to review it as part of films I'm willing to talk about again. But before I do that, I might as well skim through at least a good chunk of the Alien franchise by Ridley Scott. Of course, I probably won't be able to do every one of the films, as I haven't really seen all of them leading up to this point. That is, of course, until later years, when it eventually started to come around. But back then, I didn't have as much access, nor was I even old enough to be able to see these films. However, it was mostly the first two films that I feel like have truly grown on me over the years. So it only seems fair, to some extent, that perhaps this might just be it. The first two Alien films, in 79 and 86, probably are going to be the best pieces for me to cover at the point of which that I will eventually head to the theater this weekend and cover Alien Romulus as another bonus piece for the series. Of course, there's also a lot of other material that I have since made, but unfortunately failed to upload. So I'm gonna have to make up for lost time throughout the next week. So, okay, what we're gonna do here is get started with Alien from 1979. As it pretty much implies with the title and the date of release, this was one of the first major examples of an alien-based horror film. A title that is as simple yet as effective as possible. With the tagline, "No one can hear you scream," well, it's pretty self-explanatory that it all builds up to an epic legacy that even after 45 straight years of time, it's never grown old. It's lived up to us with the majority of things. The cast, directing, storyline, plot twists, but probably one of the biggest pieces that really rewards in its success are the practical effects. You could probably never do anything like that nowadays. And with all the CG and all the good stuff that we've had, it's practically unbeatable. But you gotta admit, some of these older films really allowed for potential to build. And with all the effort that people were able to put in, it was quite impressive at the time. But nothing compared to what we can offer these days. So I hope that Romulus really does live up to a whole new level of effects. But on to Alien. The plot of the film starts off with the crew on board a commercial spaceship known as the Nostromo. The Nostromo itself is carrying cargo off to a certain destination amongst the stars. Unfortunately though, it doesn't get too far before a certain distress signal awakens the crew. The crew of course consists of Ellen Ripley, played by the one and only Sigourney Weaver. You also have on board with you varying other crew members, including Dallas, played by Tom Skerritt, Lambert, played by Veronica Cartwright, John Hurt, of course, plays the member known as Kane, Ash, played by Ian Holm, Harry Dean Stanton, playing the character Brett, Yaphet Kotto, playing the character Parker, and of course, there unfortunately is another guest on board. But before any of that happens, this distress signal is in fact responded to, with an eventual investigation followed by the crew of the Nostromo themselves. They apparently land on a certain moon known as LV-426 and encounter a wrecked ship in the distance. This ship apparently has been sitting around for a very long time. on LV-426. And what they find inside are probably some of the most epic and sick scenery that were ever crafted. In terms of how the practical effects were put together, they were all in fact designed and assembled by the one and only H.R. Giger. The man himself has been behind hundreds of different sets and a lot of impressive, intuitive pieces of art that we've come to know about. Of course, one thing about the Alien films is that the practical effects really do carry on, not just with the scenery, but also with the animatronic components. Because once the crew ventures deeper into the ship itself and discover the pilot, whom is in fact regarded as the space jockey with a hole in its chest that apparently happened from some unknown cause, until they go even deeper into the bowels of the ship and discover eggs. Eggs that apparently are live and ready to attack. These eggs are in fact the remnants and the current vessels of a creature known as the Facehuggers. When you least expect it, there's no dramatic sting, no certain ominous note of music made by the composer in the background. It's all silence, with some background noises here and there to fill up the atmosphere and bring about a sense of chill and spookiness. Not to mention some other effects, including some fog, are also added in to tantalize the impending doom that is about to set onto the crew. Of course, one of the eggs ends up hatching in front of them, and when they least expect it, bam! A facehugger jumps up right onto one of the members, and boy, it is crazy. It's quite a jump scare that has come around long before real jump scares were even invented. Anyways, once they find out about this creature, it attached itself to the person's face. They're all escorted back on board the Nostromo, where they closely inspect the creature. Apparently, it's attached to his face, coiled around his neck with its tail, and when they try to remove it, apparently, it bleeds acid. It burns through a few holes in the ship, and it really is a terrifying sight. We're barely even 40 minutes into the film, and it really shows just how big things could possibly get. And then of course, the facehugger apparently ends up dying, falling off of the body, and then of course, after a few moments pass, it all seems alright. But it turns out, there's something behind this facehugger that they didn't know about until it happens in front of them, and the chest cavity straight up explodes. Apparently, that was an egg that the facehugger implanted within him. And when it hatches, it bursts out of the chest. Of course, this chest burster alien, and of course, with all this prior knowledge about the facehugger, and now with the new creature to worry about, it does seem that we're really pushing it forward. And then of course, we're looking at an alien life form that's now aboard the ship. So, like I said, an unexpected guest comes aboard and is not only feared upon by the crew members, but now it does seem that when it's on the loose, it might be plotting its next move, or something else entirely is going on. But we don't entirely know that for sure, unless we're familiar with the film itself. Anyways though, with the other members that are still on board after the death that had just taken place, there brings about a new sense of urgency and paranoia. What could possibly be going on inside the ship now, considering this newcomer to the ship? The Nostromo itself is made for carrying cargo, not really for passengers. So, while they do try to carry on and try to get their job done, this alien does unfortunately allow for a dozen different possibilities to happen. It hides all over the place. And when the other members basically get about to try to do their business and complete various tasks in order to get the job done successfully and on schedule, other members suddenly end up turning missing. Yeah, no joke. With the likes of other members that are on board, including Brett, Parker, and Lambert, you know, it eventually just boils down to, is this alien truly a murderer? Or are these people just not coming back? Not everything about this is known for sure. It eventually boils down to a certain point that goes down with Ash. Apparently, there's a little thing that takes place where Ash apparently attacks the other people. They're forced to fight back, and when they do, they decapitate him, and he basically is leaking white blood all over the place. And a number of different things are apparently hanging out of him. His head, his body, apparently are all connected with different components. Turns out, this Ash character is apparently an android. An android that was created by the Weyland-Yutani Company. A corporation that apparently had a secret plan for the Nostromo crew. A secret plan to, in fact, not only investigate the moon and the ship on it, but to bring back one of the eggs with it. One of the eggs aboard the Nostromo and brought all the way back to Earth. I mean, that actually is a pretty scary thought to put together. It really makes you wonder, what could they possibly be planning back there? What could they possibly be thinking about getting an alien egg off of a certain moon with a crew that barely even has any kind of experience piloting the ship and operating on the cargo bay alone, let alone them apparently being on the same plane as, let's say, a Marine or something. Of course, we'll get to Marines later on. Anyways, though, it really makes you wonder, why would they send a certain crew with no weapons and little resources of any kind, apparently from some bare necessities or essential pieces? Why would they think to send a crew to a moon like that with hostile aliens on board a certain ship that crash landed possibly thousands of years ago? Hostile aliens that apparently are capable of taking these people down with little effort. It's definitely one of those moments that really makes you feel a bit frustrated. Do they really think that the crew would actually survive this whole thing? Considering that a few deaths would have happened by this point, especially with that chest burster having killed somebody already, it really is a mystery. Ash, of course, was true to his programming, his word in play by his superiors. This plan, of course, set upon by Weyland-Yutani. You know, it really is something worth investigating. So when Ripley and the rest of the survivors on board still try to piece this puzzle together, try to find a way to get a hold of the alien, and try to find a way to get their cargo to where it needs to go on time without any issue, they do try to, in fact, formulate a few plans here and there. But it still turns out that the alien is not only killing these people, but it's actually growing. A certain growth spurt that apparently makes it even taller than a regular person. I might as well imply here, though, the alien is, of course, a well-known costume and animatronic mixture. Not only crafted by H.R. Giger, but it was also performed by Balaji Badejo, an African person who was a rather tall individual, but had himself the talent to pull off possibly some of the scariest stunts we've seen made by an alien suit. This was, of course, in 1979, a while before a number of different alien-based costumes, animatronics, and other such practical and computerized effects could have possibly been perfected. And while they certainly did a good job at making them look menacing and intimidating, especially giving them that trademarked jaw, basically an inner jaw that comes right out, and a spiked tail, basically. This is a biomechanical creature that is in fact hostile and shows no mercy to any creature that it sees. So it really is a formidable menace aboard the ship. And when it all comes down to, apparently Ellen Ripley ends up the very last survivor aboard the ship. After all that's happened, after all the crew members that have come and gone, it's just her and this alien. So what happens now? She's got no way of stopping it, defeating it on her own, unless she had some sort of plan to put into motion. She does, of course, come to realize that the alien apparently is afraid of fire, but even that is more or less just a repellent and not an actual method of killing the alien. So what eventually happens is that she actually sets off the self-destruct sequence on the ship itself. 10 minutes commence, and while she does formulate a plan to escape and attempt to take whomever is left alive with her, she unfortunately is forced to abandon everything aboard the ship, including anyone still clinging to life. Somehow, after all that's happened, those encounters and all those attacks that took place. 5 minutes then takes place, and the abort sequence apparently is aborted itself. She can't stop the countdown from taking place. So, what does she do? She hitches a ride aboard one of the escape pods. An escape pod that might as well be a ship in and of itself. But even when she does escape and the ship explodes in front of her, she still has one more problem to deal with. And it's not necessarily what you might think. Somehow the alien actually climbed aboard the escape pod with her. But she doesn't realize this until some time later. She does, however, make a hasty plan to step into a spacesuit quietly and gingerly and eventually get to the controls where it opens the airlock to the vessel itself. The alien still tries its hardest to cling on, but she was able to beat it. Blowed out the airlock, and that's basically that. The xenomorph, as it's commonly known as, is no more. Lost and floating around in space. So it's basically the end of a good piece of a great movie from the late 70s. Being one of the first horror movies, otherwise known as a slasher, it was a bit hard at the time to formulate any kind of viable criticism towards this. A lot of people were very stunned and impressed by the work that H.R. Giger and Ridley Scott have put together, plus all the actors involved. So of course, this was a big movie in 1979, had earned a pretty good box office amount of money. And of course we know that the effects and other such parts, especially the storyline that takes place in space, has a number of claustrophobic feels to it thanks to the many bowels and hallways of the ship. And of course, the plot that revolves around a crew responding to a call, unfortunately to find a certain hostile visitor on board their ship, was quite a big thing. And while it's not entirely original, having basically botched certain other older films from the 50s, it certainly did take old cliches and standpoints from other films and actually make them even better than they originally did. It might be a bit challenging to try to do the same exact thing after 45 years, but hopefully we'll see how Alien Romulus does in theaters when it comes by tomorrow. But before I do that, I will in fact talk a bit about the second film later on. For now though, I give an 8.9 out of 10.1 for this film entirely. So I'll see you guys later with Aliens in 1986. 7 years after the original. But more importantly, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side.
I want you, but I don't have you yet. I ain't got no tricks to be playing on you.